You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. The title of today's show is, Oh, so now it's a problem. That title brought to you by Diego Lopez on Twitter. Hi, I'm your host, Richard Reddy, but my friends call me Spanners, so let's be friends. Welcome to our Austrian GP race review. We'll review a race that had gone to sleep before an Undertaker-style awakening. A race that looked like it was heading the way of a Spain. Oh, we just need 5 more laps ending, and then suddenly it came alive with a series of rare errors from Verstappen and Red Bull that allowed Lando Norris to catch up with a tyre advantage and a hunger to win. So coming up, we'll discuss, was that George Russell's best performance in a Mercedes? How did he put himself in the position to gobble up that glory? We'll of course ask, whose fault is all the things? And we'll explore what constitutes moving under braking. But we are an independent podcast produced in the podcasting shed with the kind support of our patrons and partners. We aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. I'm joined in the shed by Chris Stevens. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Spanners. A huge congratulations to Aston Martin on their victory today, though that was, of course, at the Spa 24 Hours, not at the Red Bull Ring.
Well, I think anyone who survived the Spa 24 Hours deserves credit just for getting through that rain in the night.
Especially the rain in the night.
We're also joined by streamer extraordinaire, Scott Tuffey. Hello, Scott.
Hey Spanners, it's good to see that in real life drivers also move under braking and not just in the sim racing world.
It's something I want to talk to you about because I think I employ the same crafty technique that Max Verstappen employs, and I actually agree with him that he's not technically moving under braking. Will that cause an argument?
No, we'll be absolutely fine.
Let's see. And we're also joined by an agent of chaos, #1, ex-TV star and radio DJ, Ibiza, hopped up superstar dude. It's Kristian Pedersen. Hello, Kristian.
Good evening, guys. I have to admit something from the get-go. I didn't watch the last 20 laps, and it was kind of a boring race.
Yeah.
But we'll get through it. I'm pretty sure we'll find something.
We'll fill you in. We'll fill you in on the bits and bobs.
Thank you. Always, Spanners.
Will anyone object if I skip straight forward to the bit that Kristian is claiming to have neglected? Of course, I think we have to start off with that sensational ending, or that sensational end to the battle between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Now, of course, in the sprint race, we'd had a little bit of a preview. And normally, my main complaint has been that the sprint race is a spoiler for what's coming up. So that has been kind of offset by the fact that they can go to Parc Fermé and they can break Parc Fermé and they can change their setups. And I think a lot of the teams changed their car significantly between the sprint races and the real race. So the biggest change that I think I identified that changed the makeup of the race was that in the sprint race, Verstappen clearly had better race pace in the car. The Red Bull seemed like a better race car. But we also got a preview to the future battle between Verstappen and Norris. And I think in that race, the difference between the cars was much less obvious. The race pace was much more similar, but Red Bull had managed to get this massive qualifying pace. So in this case, Chris, the sprint race, I felt like it was going to ruin the main race because, frankly, I'd been quite fatigued of F1 by the time we got to today. But actually, the story of Norris versus Verstappen was an epic weekend-long fight.
The thing is, it added to the Grand Prix because they were taking knowledge from their wheel-to-wheel battle into the Grand Prix itself. You can almost see the moment where Norris has identified, I can't pass Verstappen at turn 4, the downhill braking zone after the second straight. I'm going to have to do it at turn 3 into the biggest stop, the hairpin that leads on to that back straight. And so that's when he does his super impressive lunge down there. He barely gets it stopped and they just squeeze through the corner. And you can see in the Grand Prix itself, that was, attack number 1 from Norris to try and make that move again. And, you know, he did have a couple of goes at it, but you could also see that Max was wise to it this time, and he adjusted his defense accordingly. But it was somewhat outside the rules of combat. And I'm not just talking about the actual contact that ended both their races.
Scott, that first battle in the sprint race, to me, that there looked like a sort of, and Lando Norris didn't quite know where he was and what he was at, and maybe a little bit of a nosebleed from being in that position to win. And Verstappen just seemed like completely in control.
Yeah, I think it was naivety from Lando Norris. He had the DRS, and that Red Bull was just so much quicker in a straight line than the McLaren. I mean, even without DRS, he was able to stay in the tow and get up alongside and make that move down into turn 4. And I think anyone who's even raced on sim racing knows that you always try and force the overtaking car around the outside, because it's a longer way for them to go round. The corner is off camber, and there's gravel on the outside as well. So obviously with today's racing rules, if you go into that corner ahead, you're allowed to force them off the circuit in an essence, into that gravel. And
we've seen so many cars lose out on the outside of that turn 4 and end up getting tagged. So Albon, Perez, both of whom got tagged by Mercedes there. But yeah, because the corner is like always dipping away and forcing you away, if you've got that inside line, you're really hanging the guy on the outside to dry. And there's only really been issues there when the outside car has tried to squeeze away from the exit.
But heck, it happened to Piastri on the opening lap of the race, didn't it?
Yeah. Kristian.
Yeah.
The funny thing about the sprint race and that particular overtaking attempt was the way that Verstappen drives was already evident right there, because they go down to turn number 4 and he chooses the inside, right? Forces Lando to choose the outside. Yeah. As soon as he sees Norris choosing the outside, he immediately squeezes him. He immediately goes to the other side. And that is basically that is how he's racing. He's racing the car the way the car drives behind him. And it didn't become dangerous there, but yeah. we'll hear with the rest of the show.
Well, definitely, yeah, he did do that. And I think Lando, you could see how disheartened he was again in the interviews after the sprint race. Definitely I mean, you only learn from your mistakes at the end of the day. And he's had a couple of opportunities at chasing Max down, and this was the first kind of time they've gone wheel to wheel. And he definitely took that, as Chris mentioned, as a lesson into today. And played Max Verstappen at his own game. And oh boy, I tell you what, if you can't dish it out, or if you dish it out, you better be able to take it. And today we found out a driver who definitely cannot take having his own games thrown straight back at him.
Yeah, so I will say that Lando kind of goads Verstappen a little bit in that sense with some of his attempts in the Grand Prix itself, fighting for the lead there, because he's doing the big lunges. He's pushing the track limits as well, because he would have had to have made the move and then pull 5 seconds on Max, because he did end up with a 5-second time penalty for the track limits there after doing an attempt and then running off the road. You can argue that he's gone off the road there because Max is reacting to Lando in the braking zones and moving across in the braking zones there.
We need jingle. We need the jingles banners.
What, whose fault is it? Yeah, we're getting there. Yes. We're getting there. I didn't mind the track limits, by the way. I love how we'll have a longer chat about the track limits when we talk about Piastri. But I like the fact that during the race, there's actual jeopardy for going off. But I don't feel like it's designed for when you have contact and go off. I feel like track limits specifically is designed for when you're being a bit cheeky, trying to get a bit of extra purchase on the exit and entry. I don't think it's like you got yeeted off in an incident which is later declared by the stewards to be not your fault, i.e. the contact was caused by somebody else, which resulted in you going off, and then you get a track limits violation for that. I was like, ugh.
No, the penalty, it was one before, because he had a lunge and he ran off himself.
That was the one. Oh, right. Yeah, I still think it's not designed for going off under racing.
The problem is that it's reported by the marshals, right? And race control can't pick through every single one of those things and to know why somebody went off, I think. But what I don't get is where has he picked up these 3 previous track limits violations if track limits is so hard to do now? I mean, they must have all happened between turns 6 and 7 or something, I guess. It seems to be the only place, as Oscar Piastri found out, where you can do track limits now.
I find it obscure that we are not presented with any evidence of this when it's such a conclusive thing that is going to change everything. We need the evidence. Otherwise, you have to rethink these penalties because, I mean, it's just word against word, isn't it, at this point?
Yeah, and our words will be set against each other.
Exactly.
As we play a little game of Whose Fault Is It?
Whose fault is it?
Okay, there's a lot of different elements here because there was various battles in this particular war that we had between Verstappen and Lando Norris. So you had a couple of instances of basically Lando Norris with the DRS chasing down and going for a move up the inside. One I think was into turn 3 and one was into turn 4, where Verstappen appeared to have moved in the braking zone. And then Lando Norris is very vocal, trying to basically play the referee while racing. And I wonder how much that happens all the time, Chris, when there's, someone hunting down and we don't always hear the radio messages. But there, it sort of sounded like Norris was on in an iRacing lobby complaining in the group chat.
I tell you, it happens every single time, Spanners. If the car in front of you goes a millimeter off the racetrack, you're immediately on the button. That guy's just gone off the track. And I've heard of in other series, I've heard of drivers being told, you didn't tell us that this guy went off the track 27 times. You need to tell us when this happened so that we can report it to the stewards because they don't keep on top of it. But it was quite nice F1 TV playing that radio. Oh, he pushed me off. He needs to give me that place back within seconds of that message obviously happening. Normally we wait a couple of laps for it, but the moving under braking,
all right,
100% he was moving under braking in a couple of his defenses. I think don't agree. Undeniable.
I don't agree he was moving under braking, but
he literally moves in the braking zone and he reacts to the big thing. The difference between defending and blocking, and you can't do blocking, is when you react to the car behind you. I actually, a couple of months ago, I was working on a video with professional racing drivers about this for a client, and they all said the same thing. It's when you react to the car behind you, and you can see Norris positions his car behind, and then Max reacts accordingly in the braking zone.
Totally agree. Can't disagree with it. It is Max of old. It's Max of old. We've been told this guy has matured, how much mature he is. He's able to race wheel to wheel now. Look at him, look how he's grown up. He went wheel to wheel with Charles Leclerc. He has not grown up, clearly, in the last 2.5 years since he last had a wheel to wheel battle. Andrea Stella, man of the moment, afterwards, said it perfectly while being interviewed by Ted Kravitz. And he said, they've learned nothing from Max has learned nothing from 2021, and this is down solely to the FIA for not punishing him harsh enough for what happened back with his fights with Lewis. And now he's been so dominant for the last 2.5 years that he hasn't had to fight anyone. So of course he's matured. He has seemed like he's matured off circuit. Now, don't get me wrong, his comments after the race were a little bit more measured than it normally would be, and he has grown off circuit. But clearly, when it comes to wheel, the man would rather crash than lose. Now, I get it. They all want to win. But Lando put it perfectly. I've lost a lot of respect for him because how can you trust a driver who you consider to be a friend as well to move in the braking zone in the fastest series of motorsport in the world? There's a reason why this rule exists, for safety, because they move so quickly under braking and the closing speeds are so quick. You cannot be reactionary, and that's exactly what Max was doing today. And I think that's also why Lando, why some of those dives and those sends, a couple of them were a little bit out of control because he left more room than he would do because he was so scared of where Max was going to end up.
And I think the difference between, the Max we saw today, the Max we saw in 21, and the Max we've seen in between is that he's had that innate confidence that it doesn't really matter what he does. He's going to get through and still win the race. At no point or on very few occasions has it actually looked like a win might be in jeopardy if he doesn't make this move immediately, right? Today, the win was absolutely in jeopardy, and maybe, losing that confidence because suddenly the car feels terrible and we've lost 6 seconds in a pit stop and suddenly it's all crumbling around him.
I'm happy Scott brought up the Andrea Stella interview, because that was not an interview where they sit down for an hour and talked about things. That was straight after the race, straight after the finish line.
It was so good.
And actually, his exact words were part of his exact words were, but the problem behind this is that if you don't address these things honestly, they will come back. And this is exactly what happened to, I think, a little bit that entire scandal with Horner at the start of the year. That's a product of how they treated, from a social media point of view, Silverstone in 21. If you go and play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes. And Formula One has a problem with the way Max Verstappen is driving, because they are letting him get away with things that no one else is getting away with.
Well, can we... sorry.
Sorry?
I thought you'd stop. Sorry, you're far away in Denmark. Carry on.
I think someone's gonna have to maybe specify some rules or something. I think we need some sort of dot to this situation. Someone needs to do something, otherwise it's just going to continue.
And so it's worth noting that Stella didn't say Verstappen's a villain. He's bad for what he does. He's a bad person. He's the sort of person who eats mushy peas. Ugh. Right? He didn't do that. He talked specifically about the stewarding and allowing it to happen. And my point in all of this, with all these driver standards, I think Verstappen got away with absolute racing murder in 2021. But why would you stop doing it when you're not being punished for doing it?
Exactly.
So after 2021, I'd never said Verstappen's a terrible person, a terrible driver, and he should be sanctioned. I said the rest of the grid needs to look around, look at what Verstappen gets away with, and realise that's what you're allowed to do. And if the whole grid had en masse done that, I think it would have been, more of an issue for F1.
Totally agree. And we saw that today with Lando implementing those same tactics on Verstappen. There's comments from Verstappen after the race saying you can't just send it and hope that someone moves out of the way, which is so hypocritical of the guy, because he's made an absolute reputation and career out of doing this since he came into F1, and now the racing rules are there to accommodate exactly how he's raced. So now someone's implemented the same tactics against him, it's not okay. However, the rules have, once again, as Kristian says, probably need to be clarified, because once again, Max Verstappen wasn't penalised, in my opinion, for breaking the rules, because he maintained a position by keeping his foot in and driving around the outside curb.
That was interesting, yeah.
And rejoin the circuit, maintain a position. He did that exact move, going closer, leaving less room for Charles Leclerc, and won the race in 2019. I think he won the race in 2019.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what is it? It is not exactly necessarily the rules, it's the implementation for them. And the stewards today, I think, and it was very convenient that once they both made contact, Lando Norris finally got the 5-second time penalty for his off track, which was the one that was being investigated a few laps prior. They most definitely prioritised today's stewards, and the FIA prioritised entertainment over the fairness of the sport.
See, that one where Max goes off and Lando thinks he's going to go through and Max comes out ahead, similar to the 2019 incident.
With Leclerc.
And what Nico Hülkenberg got a penalty for in the sprint race as well. For me, that's kind of the definition of running someone off the track. Now, I think the only mitigating circumstance in the Norris-Verstappen one is the fact that Verstappen is closing the door mid-braking zone. And so Norris is forced to go tighter and then have less room on the exit.
I don't like it. I don't like the move Norris done.
No.
But it's the racing rules now. And he did everything within the letter of the law. Max was given sufficient room. He should have come out of the throttle, slotted in behind Lando. He didn't. He kept his foot in and held on to the position by just going around the sausage curb. And that's the problem. You have to race to the rules that are there. And it's one rule for everyone else and one rule for Max. He got away with moving under braking numerous times, and the only reason he got penalised is because of the outcome of him actually making contact. Otherwise, we will probably not even have a penalty or a post-race penalty for Max if they both made it without contact to the end of the race.
Scott. Sorry, yes. Kristian.
That's okay. Relatively to the bigger picture, we're talking about a penalty applied to a team they have to serve in some sort of scenario. There's the 5 second, there's the 10 second, there's a stop and go, there's even a stop and go 10 second. Today, Hamilton was sliding his car and just touched the white line on a stupid pit entry.
Don't start.
He got half the penalty of what Verstappen got from doing moving under braking numerous times. And that's just, I mean, this is $1 million sport, just growing every day. And if you apply rules like this, we're going to need some VAR situations or VAR technology.
I would even argue that Max didn't get a penalty for moving under braking. He got a penalty for failing to leave Norris sufficient room. Because what he did, the maneuver in that specific scenario where they eventually made contact, the only thing Max does wrong is the space he leaves. Had he left 10 centimeters more to the left, everything he'd done there would have been perfectly legal and good in the eyes of the racing stewards. Just the space he left on the left side.
I have a small counter to that because it's correct. And the rule got covered on the commentary I was watching. But basically, to avoid weaving and blocking, if you want to cover the inside, that's fine. But as we all know, when you make a really strong move to cover the inside, the car behind goes, okay, I'm not going to get the inside line, tries to take the best possible line on the outside. You can go back to the outside. So that's one. So you can do one move to the inside and then you can make another one to the outside, but you have to leave a whole car's width, right? So he was doing that, but he was clearly intent on pulling a Rosberg 2015 on Hamilton. And actually, after the initial contact, he completed the Rosberg maneuver. So I think even without that initial contact, he's fully planning to take Norris all the way to the end of the exit. And that's what caused the damage, I think.
No, the first Max got an instant puncture.
Right.
But Lando's damage, I think, came from that second contact.
Which I think was the plan all along.
Didn't end there. Because then heading down to turn 4, what is he doing? Moment of madness, driving him onto the grass. Now, I'm sure defenders will probably say he's looking maybe at Ocon coming up.
Rubbish.
I think it was Ocon to
Absolute rubbish.
He's driven them off because he doesn't know at this moment in time what damage Lando has, if he has any at all. And he's looking to cover him off. And I don't know, it's just absolute moments of madness. And the best sports, I've said it previously on this podcast, that we see in high-pressured moments, the best sportsmen come through. The ones that go down in history are the ones who are able to cope with high-pressured environments. Today was one of those that I'm sure we'll get to, was all caused by his faultless pit stop team being very issue-prone today with that poor pit stop, which allowed Lando to get within the DRS. But, he's proven time and time again that when he's put under pressure in wheel-to-wheel scenarios, he kind of folds, or he at least can't do it within the confines of the track.
I will say he's a 3-time world champion, so he has proved that he can deliver success.
He's quick. Yeah, he's quick, but he's in a dominating car when no one has been able to push him and go wheel to wheel. And that's really where racing in high-pressured environments is. And he's fouled again today.
Kristian.
If this was the first race I've ever watched of Verstappen racing, I would just have called this a racing incident. I mean, that could happen in a racing incident. It just didn't see him. But when you know Verstappen's racing, I wouldn't call it skills, but techniques, and especially defense techniques, you know what he did there. You know exactly what he did there. We have all done it in a go-kart. especially the thing he did down to turn 4, where he just wouldn't let Lando go by and put him on the grass. That is a disqualification in my book. I mean, you cannot drive another car off the track after an incident. That is revenge or something like that. That should, just like the brake stoppage in Qatar at one point, and Hamilton. Why is no one looking at this? If this happened at a racing track, a go-kart track, everyone would be like, "You're off. You're not racing anymore today." And we've all seen them at the racing tracks. We all know how they do this. We know why they do it. We know how it works, and we know which type of people these are. This is people who has not been educated into how to behave.
And the fact that no one asked about it afterwards in the press pens, it seemed, as well. And it's the third incident in 2 race weekends where somebody has aggressively used their car to make a point to someone else.
Third, yeah.
Think about the 2 practice sessions in Spain. And for me, those are race ban things. Just do not even give them a chance. Just send them home, and that will immediately send a very clear message to those drivers.
Okay, but in the last race, and 2 rights don't make a wrong here, but Lando Norris was putting Verstappen onto the grass as well in what was just a pretty ridiculous move. And when he tried to say, I think there's room, Hamilton and Verstappen both laughed at him in the interview pen. So look, this is like a habit of really dangerous driving start to creep in. And look, we've gotten away with it, but these are all the sorts of behaviours that could lead to something really avoidable.
Just back to the sort of contact, because I think what Max was maybe anticipating when he was moving over to the left was for Norris to take a bit of the curb, maybe some of the tarmac runoff area there, which some people have been doing. Because when you look at it, you see Lando's left wheels are up against the white line and sort of not any further. Really. And it reminds me of a similar incident. Max got penalized for doing a similar maneuver on Bottas at Monza. And there's a little green strip of sort of fake AstroTurf or grasscrete or whatever it is on the way into the first chicane. Bottas doesn't use that, and Max moves over, and he gets a penalty for causing a collision. And when he gave his, they're doing a great job at killing racing team radio, in the same way that Max kind of didn't really take responsibility for today's incident either.
I want to say you can't really compare the 2 incidents because at a start, it's not uncommon someone's got 2 wheels on the grass. But if Norris did this at every start, then we could talk about it. If it was a tendency, if it was how he started Formula 1 races always, then yes, then it would be a problem if he wasn't penalized. That's not the case. Lando is a pretty clear and he's a clean driver. He's working for it, and it will come to him.
Okay, do I risk defending Verstappen here?
Well, I think
do it.
I think no one kind of disagrees on the actual contact itself that Max was penalised for.
No, and I think he's doing extreme defending. So I object slightly to the notion that he shouldn't defend and that he should just allow a DRS pass to cruise by him. So
I'm saying that.
Huh?
No one's saying that.
Why can't I just mischaracterize your argument and just argue a much more extreme version of what you said? So look,
because that would make you a politician.
Yeah, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to yield and capitulate. He can position his car where he wants. If he's ahead, he can pick. And what a common tactic is: stick yourself in the middle of the straight, and with a car behind you, and then look for that first reaction of the car behind you, and then decide what your first position is going to be. Now, in the braking zone, this is what we're talking about when you're saying, it's blocking. You're reacting to what the driver is doing.
It's blocking, even if you're flat out on the straight as well. It's any movement you make that's in reaction to the car.
Okay, but behind. You know what? Is it a reaction, or that is the position I was going to pick? I was always going to pick the inside. Okay. He just happened to move at the same time. Yeah, my bad. Sorry about that. I'll try and make sure it doesn't happen again. But the thing that Verstappen does, which I don't think constitutes moving in the braking zone, is something that I do myself on a kart track or iRacing as a defense when somebody's got the run on you, particularly down the inside, is instead of, say, at a hairpin where you're going to brake in a straight line, stay quite wide, and then kind of U-shape the corner and sort of fling it around with an early acceleration. Instead of doing that, I might go, actually, I'm not going to U the corner this time. This time I'm going to V the corner, and you kind of just head for the apex. And so you get to just before the braking zone, point your car towards the apex, and then hit the brakes as hard as you can. When you're Ving it, you're going to brake a little bit later, so that's going to give yourself a bit of racing room. Now, I'm not moving in the braking zone. I'm heading towards the apex line that I'm going to take. And I actually think that is what Verstappen is doing. And I wonder, Stuffy, because, I watch your streams, would you ever dream of defending like that? And yes, technically you're moving across the lanes, but you're braking in a straight line. I'm not sure what Verstappen did today, although he moved. And the thing is, I looked at the SkyPad, I saw all that. They only showed it from the rear of Verstappen's car. They didn't show what he was doing with the steering wheel. And he himself said, I turned before the braking zone, then I hit the brakes.
He is still he can do that to an extent. He is being reactionary. Still, this is the whole thing. Everything that he was doing was too late. It was all around. It was after the 100 ball marker. He isn't directing his car as he's braking. He is doing it after he's braking in reaction to how Lando is positioning his car because he's slightly behind. Now, Max today completely underestimated the ability of Lando under the brakes on those fresher tyres at the stage of that race. He thought he had him covered. And it was only when he would check a glance in his mirrors or in his peripheral vision that he would think, oh, crap. And he got caught out and he kept doing it. And then eventually, of course, it's led to that contact. But if he was doing what he said he was doing, I totally understand. But he wasn't then positioning his car at a V shape at the apex as he's braking. He's doing it as after he's braking. That's reactionary. So I think, you can. Someone can prove me wrong, but I think you can do that as you brake. You choose a direction in which you're going to brake.
Yeah.
But he's doing that. He's braking in a straight line and then moving, which Lando is getting caught out on and wasn't too happy with, and no one is too happy with.
So just a slight thing on that when you talked about the braking points. So before you move on, if I am going to V the corner in a defensive manner, I'm able to brake later than I would do like normally. So there was talk of like the 100-meter board is the brake point, but obviously you're not straight to 100% on the brakes there. You might drag them up the hill a little bit or drag them down the hill into turn 4, and then you're starting to move the weight over, so you've got a slightly longer braking zone. If I'm just trying to defensively V the corner, my braking point is going to be a lot later. So yeah, just because Lando Norris chose to have a more progressive braking into that corner, I can choose to brake late, and then so I can't move in his braking zone or I can't move in my braking zone. Because you can stop it a lot quicker.
Can I say something, Scott? I think the point is, of course, you can brake later in a V corner, but your traction out of the corner is going to be ruined compared to the U corner.
Yeah, so you block
it's a little bit give and take, basically.
Yeah, so I think the idea on those defensive moves is you V into the corner, brake a lot, and then hopefully, you can also block pass, which I think is what Verstappen was doing today. I think we're just not used to seeing that aggressive a defense in Formula One, and I think there's no one does it like Verstappen does it.
With good reason.
Kristian.
I'm going to give you a few points, Spanners, because Scott, Chris, and I are right, and you are wrong.
Okay.
So here we go. The first one is going to be Alex Brundle. He finishes off his analysis with the words, I don't think he intended to move into Norris. They cut to the entire F1 Live team and they were all laughing out loud. That was really funny. The other thing is Kristian Horner's quote, which is, I felt like Norris was trying to cause something up at turn 3 after knowing he would get a track limits penalty. When Kristian Horner tells something like that, you know the opposite is true. So, and then the third one, which is probably the best one, in the slowdown room, the room before the podium, right? They were all three watching it, and one of them said, "Oh, he moved twice." So I mean, when even the drivers are laughing at it in the cool down room, and everyone else is laughing about it, something's wrong, right?
Yeah. But can I just say though, in 2021, no one was laughing about it. If you were sitting there complaining
about it,
no, but if you were complaining about these moves in 2021, you'd get shot down an awful lot more. And frankly, on Twitter, where I get regularly hammered by Verstappen fans, the real defense they could come up with, was but Norris. Yeah, but Norris in Spain. That's the counter. I think even Verstappen fans will look at that and go, oh, yeah. I mean, they were celebrating that in 2021 when he was chasing down the incumbent. Now he's the champ. And now it doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah, exactly that. It's the fact of the roles have reversed. Max is no longer the hot shot trying to win his first world championship, taking down the status quo and the domination of Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. It's now roles reversed. He's the one who's been the dominating figure and not really had a challenge for the last few years. And you got Lando Norris, who's fresh, who's a very popular person in just F1, has lots of fans. And yeah, today it's been very much flipped on its head, and it's been interesting to see people's perspectives after coming out and condemning that, other than, of course, the Red Bull team.
Okay, so we've spent, a good chunk of time on this topic. It's a meaty topic, and it's so seeped in the history of recent Formula One, and it also is important, going forward. So 10-second penalty, it's a start. I would like to see that running Norris off onto the grass investigated, not particularly because I want Max Verstappen put in stocks and punished. It's because I would like to be a fan of a sport where those Schumacher-esque type maneuvers, again, like against Damon Hill, I would like to watch a sport where those are clamped down on and punished. So I'm much more concerned about when the next person thinks about doing it, they go, oh, but Verstappen actually got a 5-place grid penalty for that. So that's what I'm concerned with, Scott. The 10-second penalty is fine. It's a start. He still increases his championship lead. But that was also true in Silverstone with Hamilton's 10-second penalty. But at least he got pinged for that being his fault. And I think that the part of that penalty was all the other stuff and all the other aggression moving. I think it was a culmination of all the defences, and they go, okay, we can definitely get him for that one. 10 seconds, go.
Yeah, I agree. It is a start. However, as we mentioned earlier on, Kristian mentioned it about how Lewis Hamilton and Alex Albon got penalties for slightly crossing the pit line entry, which is 5 seconds. Now, you weigh those up compared to severity. Fernando Alonso also had a poor move on Zhou Guanyu, which was also a 10-second penalty. And
that was a medical procedure, what Alonso did to Zhou, though.
I know. He launched him into the air. Poor Zhou. He's had a poor enough weekend already, let alone Fernando Alonso attacking him at the top of turn 3. But
in fairness, though, Scott, Fernando Alonso is in 0 given and full McLaren Honda I don't care anymore mode.
I know he is. But going back to the penalties, I just don't see what the issue is going back to the good old-fashioned drive-through. That's at least 20 seconds, probably even longer than that, obviously because of the exit as well at Red Bull Ring. And Max today was still very quick and finished ahead of Hülkenberg and so forth. It wouldn't have affected him. But moving forward, I think that's much better of a penalty. And it's an immediate on-track penalty as well, rather than it being dished out post-race where they can come in, pit for the soft tyre and react to it basically to try and nullify that.
Oh, how the tables turn, because was it not 6 or 7 years ago when we were saying we can't keep giving drive-through penalties for these innocuous little bits of contact because it ruins races? Well,
unless you can find Scott saying
I wasn't
that.
here.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't here for that.
Okay. No, I don't mean us. I mean, that was the general consensus.
All right, the last bit of Norris versus Verstappen is we're going to go, full gossip here. Like, what is the tea on their friendship, guys? Like, what is going to happen now? Because Norris did not look in the mood. Are you going to still be best friends with him? He's like, well, I don't know. Maybe if he says sorry. And Verstappen is not going to say sorry.
No joke. I do think this is possibly the first spark of a friendship that's going to turn into potentially a more bitter rivalry, given that how many times they're meeting each other on track at the moment and how many times we expect them to continue meeting each other on track. Whether that spark is going to be fanned into a flame, we shall see.
Oh, man. I reckon in the movie of this, about 3 weeks ago, when the McLaren started getting more pace, they were sat on a dock somewhere with beers and like a fishing rod. And they were like, you know what happened with Rosberg and Hamilton? You're like, yeah. That'd never happen to us, though, would it, Max? No, that would never happen to us. You have to pinky swear, and they're there, and they pinky swear, and then they catch fish and drink beer.
I'm sorry, Spanners, I'm sorry to ruin this BFF talk. I need to say just one thing in regards to the drive-through penalties. I totally understand that point, because it does ruin races, because the pit lanes are so long and it takes average 25 seconds, right? That's going to ruin a race. What we need is to look at unsportsmanlike behavior. And we need to have a stamp of that which can be applied to certain scenarios. And when that is applied, that is straight to the pit, possibly 10-second or maybe a disqualification.
I like things like you can't recharge your battery. There you go. Unsportsmanlike behaviour, can't
That's
recharge
cool.
your battery for 10 laps. Go. That might work out well. Right, let's move on, because neither of those guys won the race. It was actually won by someone else. I have been the biggest critic, I would say, of George Russell over the last few seasons. And I think it's been justified. There's definitely an element I'm always asking myself, is it because I'm a massive Lewis Hamilton fan and therefore anyone who goes up against him in his team is instantly the pantomime enemy? Is that the case? Possibly. I'm not going to deny that. But I think the criticisms we've had of George Russell, particularly around that weakness of race pace, has been legitimate. But when we got to a race like this and suddenly we got to sprint qualifying, it's not a super low wear circuit, but during the sprint race, through that stint on the medium, he suddenly seemed, Chris, like he was really in control, like something had changed. And then when it got to the stints today, he was really able to manage, and he didn't do what he normally does, which is chew them up at the beginning of the race. He had to fight Lewis Hamilton, so he got that done. But then he just settled in, and he just seemed to drive a really sensible race.
This was not a low deg race. This was a very high deg race, because the temperatures were off the scale and the medium tires being chewed through by the looks of it. And I think Georgie did run 2 hards, didn't he? And the sort of only jeopardy for him.
No.
He had hards on at the end.
Medium hard was what Russell did.
Sorry, you're right. So really, the only jeopardy for him at the end was the fact that Piastri was on mediums at the end and could potentially, and arguably a faster car as well, but the damage was already done in qualifying for Piastri. But no, you're right. For George, it was sort of the opposite, wasn't it, to what we're normally seeing, because Lewis was the one attacking in the early stages. But Lewis normally waits until the last 5 laps of a Grand Prix weekend to prove that he's faster than than George, right? Whereas he was trying to do it straight away, and he made the initial lunge. George really kept his composure and just simply redid him down the next straight, which was a nice bit of racecraft there. And I almost wonder if he intentionally let Lewis pass into turn 3 so that he could get the DRS for the next straight and make sure he got a good exit and everything, kind of like that Leclerc Verstappen battle from Bahrain a couple of years ago. But I think it was good strategy, and he was almost kind of in a race of his own, kind of.
Yeah, he was. Look, sometimes things fall into your lap, and today it did. He clearly didn't have the pace of Lando and Max, and I think there was quite a clear hierarchy today, or this weekend, of the teams. Red Bull with Lando slightly behind, or McLaren, and then you had Mercedes and Ferrari. And I think what was quite interesting today is that Mercedes definitely helped Russell win that, or get him as the lead Mercedes today.
Oh, here we go. Conspiracy. I don't like that. I'm going to argue. Go for it.
Lewis Hamilton, as Chris just mentioned, had a little bit of a tussle at the start, which George defended well and regained. But then they told Lewis to give the position back to Sainz after what is always a lap 1, turn 1
Scott.
incident that always happens. Drivers always run out over the curb and they stay side by side up to turn 3. And they got Lewis to give the position to Sainz while he was looking and was in the DRS of George Russell. And then that obviously compromised the rest of his race, Spanners.
Now, you're right. in that I don't think that he should have had to have given that place back, because we see that every single year. You're absolutely right in the Austrian Grand Prix. It's just the way the corner is set up, and there's a lot of common sense with these. When you have a chicane or a left-right flip-flop on a track, they normally have an escape route and then a route to get back on track, because they would rather people left the track than just have a pile up and a crunch. So those escape routes are perfectly fine. You have to go over a big curb in on that exit as well, so it's not really a massive advantage, and I think that may be where Hamilton got some floor damage anyway. So yeah, we've seen that over and over again, so it's under investigation, and I'm thinking, I even put in our patron Discord chat, hello patrons, that there's he'll be fine. I said he'll be fine. That's a complete lap one incident. It's so normal. The argument would be, did they make him give it back to keep Norris up front, like you're claiming, Stuffy? I would say the counter argument to Russell. Sorry, I would say the counter argument to that is Singapore a couple of years ago, where Norris was really loudly complaining that Hamilton had to give it back in nearly exactly the same scenario, going off track at Singapore and then taking the escape route, which is a perfectly, like, it's a mandated part of F1 starts. But the FIA won't tell people to give the place back anymore. They have to. The team makes the decision, and then they decide, based on that action. But we saw Verstappen had basically the same advantage when he went off, when he was forced off by Lando Norris, and there was no comeback there. The FIA didn't make them swap. They weren't going to make Lewis Hamilton swap. I think that Mercedes are just overcautious with this, Chris.
100% they were overcautious with it. We know that the stewards, they don't turn a blind eye, but they're much more lenient with anything that happens at turn one at the start of the race. And it was absolute classic turn one at the Red Bull Ring. Lots of cars went off, and I'm sure Lewis was not the only driver to go off and try and maintain position ahead of the car he was alongside at the time he went off. And it does have shades of Singapore, where they just did not need to do it. And I don't understand where this narrative of, he definitely would have got a 5-second penalty for doing that, and so that's why they've given the place back. What they've done there is they've seen Mercedes do it, and so they've assumed that, he must have been en route for a 5-second penalty then, which is just not the case at all. And that has completely ruined Lewis Hamilton's race in its entirety.
I would probably say the unfortunate pit lane entry ruined his race more. But yes, I mean, there was a limit in that first stint, especially. There was a limited amount of time that they had to go on the attack. And then after that, I think it was about 8 laps or so. And then you could see them all drop around 1.8 to 2 seconds back to tyre safe. So there was in some clean air, and they was all looking forward to the next stint. But yeah, I just found that very intriguing. And I think we are going to see George, and I'm not saying necessarily to favour George. I think they do, and I think you're a bit naive to think that they won't, but probably they know how George wants to fight Lewis, and they just know as a team that they'll just lose unnecessary time if they're fighting in the early stages of the race, and they'd much rather just keep them slightly apart, shall we say.
I'm pretty sure he had some damage. I think Mercedes said that after the race, which cost him around a 2/10 a lap. But you still gotta be amazed at how different the Friday Lewis is to the Saturday and Sunday Lewis. There's something not working for him.
Yeah.
Or you could say there's something working particularly well for Russell. He is out driving Hamilton, and that's just a matter of fact.
Yeah, he's definitely in a much better place mentally than Lewis. I think Lewis is. We've all been in a job where we've put in our notice, and we know how to do the job. We've got a month left or 2 months left, however long your notice period is, and you still do your job, but you know you're not doing it to the best of your ability. And I know he's in F1, and people will think, yeah, but he's a sportsman. He's in F1. He's got one of the top drives in Formula One. Look, we're only human, and I think he's definitely just looking to get out at the end of the year. And George Russell is the man at Mercedes and will be that leader next year. And it's two different mentalities. We'll see a resurgence of Lewis, hopefully next year in Ferrari. But George, look, he did the job today. That different strategy, as you said, credit where it is. He finished strong and was comfortably ahead of Sainz all race until Piastri started to chase him down towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that notice period. I did it for 3 years once. I just didn't tell them. So I did quiet quitting. Well, I was trying to be a project executive for engineering projects, and then when I got blocked a couple of times, I went, fine, I'll just do the minimum to get paid and teach myself media. And thank goodness I did, because what that means is I can host live events around the Silverstone Grand Prix, and it looks like we've got 3 live events coming up this year. So one in the part of America that's more close to Canada, the sort of New Yorky Canada bit, one over the hotter bit on the other side. But this Saturday, 6th of July, you can come and hang out with me, Chris, Brad, Alex Van G. No, Chris isn't here. Oh, so that makes it even better. Matt Trumpets.
I'm at Hockenheim.
Yeah, Matt Trumpets. We've got also Antonia might be there. Dan Drury's coming along. So it's going to be a really fun little hangout at Formula Fast Go-Karts. So from 8 p.m, you can go to missedapexpodcast.com/live show. Come and join us. There's a small cover. There's pizza available, and I'll have some beers in a bucket. You know, super classy. And come and join us, and we'll record a live show, and we'll have a quiz. So we'll just be there. Nice 3-hour hangout. Come and meet the crew. missedapexpodcast.com/live show. Link in the show notes below. All right. So all I say about the Lewis Hamilton stuff, if you want to try and paint his weekend as being somehow unlucky and being thwarted at turn 1 and being thwarted by the Mercedes tactics to swap, I would say there was about 8 other factors, and he himself was just complaining like, I'm just a bit slow here, I'm a bit slow this weekend, I'm not quite on it. There's loads of errors. So going over the pit line, that's his error. Putting yourself in a position where you're going to get squeezed out off track onto a curb that damages your floor, that's his error as well. And then, not qualifying ahead of your teammate in the first place, so you have to make that's his error as well. So I still have a sneaking feeling, though, that a Lewis Hamilton putting a weekend together at the moment, including a Saturday, or just somehow being ahead of George Russell, it doesn't matter where the other cars are around him, because it's a normal fight. It's a weird fight that he's got against George Russell with the politics in the team. But if he can just have a decent Saturday and put the car together, I think that you will see what is the actual Mercedes pace. And I get the feeling that's what Mercedes want to see as well. But the fact that you can't make any excuse, it's not happening. He hasn't strung a good weekend together, pretty much full stop. So that's just kind of on Lewis Hamilton. Kristian.
If you look at the Fridays, right, when they do the qualification simulation, there's not going to be a driver going like, I'm going to go 90%. The team is going to need him to do 100% to do the simulation. So the cars are going to go full out, and the drivers are going to give it full beans. If Hamilton is the fastest car on track almost every Friday, I'm not saying he's the fastest every Friday, but he's in top 3 every Friday. He's got the car sorted. And then something happens on Saturday. That is, we all know drivers like, I would not say Alonso, I want to say Verstappen, I want to say Hamilton. They drive at their 100.5% always. They don't suddenly become a 95% driver. So something's going on. I'm not at all suggesting sabotage. I don't believe in stupid conspiracies like that, because why would you? But there is something going on. People are speculating about tires, but I can't figure it out.
Okay, but this weekend, do you know who didn't make 8 separate errors or have 8 separate things going wrong, Chris? And that is George Russell. Like, if you want to talk about out-and-out pace and who's got the ultimate Sunday pace, that's one thing. But George Russell is out there pretty much every weekend delivering maximum George Russell. And he's driven a smart race today. So, too much of the focus should be on why Lewis didn't win. Russell won.
Yeah, and he even said after the sprint, didn't he, that, our plan is to, watch Lando and Max fight a little bit and then scoot through past them. And that's exactly what ended up happening. Wasn't quite as close to them when it happened as I'm sure he would have liked, but he called it on Saturday evening when he qualified 3rd. So, fair play to him, because he kept his car in the right position. He was in that position to pick up the scraps.
Yeah.
And, but I do think that there wasn't just, Max and Lando who could win the race as well, even when you take them out of the equation after the contact. I think the person who's going to be kicking himself most is Oscar Piastri, because his race came undone on Saturday qualifying. And it's not often that you can say the race was ruined in qualifying, unless you qualify, 17th or something, and you're going for the win. But that really did hinder his
Well, he
Sunday.
shouldn't have broken the pre-agreed rules then.
I'm really I'm just annoyed about
Go on, Chris. Go on, Chris.
Everyone.
Go off.
everyone who said that, oh, well, if the gravel's there, then it shouldn't be track limit, should it? And it's like, well, no, he still went over the white line. Doesn't matter where the gravel trap is. It's the same like it's been at every other corner, at every other circuit for the last however many years we've been doing the white line rule. He went over the white line, therefore it is track limits, therefore the lap is deleted. And it doesn't matter why he's gone off or how close he is to the gravel or whether he's gained an advantage or not. It's track limits.
What made me laugh about the defense of this is that multiple drivers got track limits there and laps deleted throughout qualifying for the whole weekend in sprint shootout and qualifying. Yeah, it was made such a big deal, obviously, because Oscar would have been in P3. But, I mean, look, if you're going to have a go at anyone, and if that's how you truly want to have the rules at that specific corner, why not just take a chunk off of the curb and don't make the curb wide enough for an F1 car to fit in between that white line and the gravel? Because that's what the issue was with that curb. And then the gravel is the track limits, But while the white line is there, and while I'm sure they've had their driver briefing and the race director has implemented, these are the track limits, these are the boundaries of the circuit, you don't raise your hand and raise your concerns at the time, then you can't speak up about it when you're the one who unfortunately becomes a victim of it.
Yeah, that gravel trap needs to be, 5 centimeters further in, doesn't it? Like closer to the track. Then you can argue that the gravel is the track limit. But it literally doesn't matter what furniture is trackside. If you're over the white line and whether you gain an advantage or not, and this has been the case whether it's grass, gravel, or asphalt, or concrete, or grasscrete, or whatever it is, in whatever scenario, especially in qualifying, that lap gets deleted.
Yeah.
Big ups to the A1 ring crew for doing the gravel, though. I mean,
it's not the A1 ring anymore, Kristian. It's called the Red Bull ring.
I'm 53. It's the A1 ring.
Don't Adam Sandler my live stream. Is that what you were doing? You're doing an Adam Sandler voice, please?
I was just doing a general, actually kind of voice.
Okay, fair enough. Okay,
but that is true. I'm sorry. Apologize. Red Bull ring. They did a magnificent job, I think. I think it's just a proactive, simple solution that is going to work for everyone. And it turned out we didn't have much of those. But I still want to. I still agree with Chris. Why make it such that it's still possible? I mean,
yeah. Why, Chris?
Exactly.
I don't know why. What I will say, Piastri pulled off 3 stunning maneuvers round the outside of turn 6 in the sprint and in the Grand Prix.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah.
As well. And I love that he just doesn't really care who he's racing, doesn't he? He's just going to, I'll just go around the outside of you. Don't really care.
And on his teammate, nonetheless, in the sprint race.
Exactly. That was phenomenal. And the one he pulled on Sainz as well, particularly towards the end of the race, was just chef's kiss. And definitely big contributing factor to finishing in second place. So not just Max and Lando took each other out. No, that was a well-earned podium.
Okay, so he's been unlucky there. And I completely lost track of what was happening to Sainz. And I don't want to poo-poo it because you're being all positive about Piastri there, and he has finished in second place. So this seems like a weird, completely unprovoked attack. But if you're Russell and you look in the wing mirrors and you've got a McLaren and a Ferrari charged down, charging you down, which drivers do you hope are in there? And as far as Russell was concerned, the correct McLaren and the correct Ferrari driver were there for him to bring that home. So for hypothetical, what? Okay, you put Norris in that McLaren. You put Norris's McLaren in there. Wait, and you put Leclerc's Ferrari there. Russell doesn't win that race today.
No. Okay, I agree with you on the McLaren one. I agree with you on that one. But no, this weekend I'd rather have had Leclerc in there because he would have fallen off the road like he has done in every session.
I think Leclerc took some kind of... I saw an interview with him after the sprint saying, I'd rather just change something wild and drastic and go for it because it can't get worse anyway.
He did, yes. He was, which is bizarre considering Ferrari bought one of the biggest update packages in Spain and they haven't obviously had the desired effect. But Leclerc's race was hampered, I believe, I didn't see it, but from what I heard from his comments, Oscar Piastri up into turn 3 or turn 4, one of the two. I think he chopped his nose off.
It was turn 4,
and took the front wing and damaged the front wing. And unfortunately, he had to pit. And then he was just goal hanging for a safety car. Just finished outside the points in 11th. But Ferrari, another kind of missing weekend from them, considering we're expecting so much more. They've seemed to have fallen off of the pace quite a bit, haven't they, of especially McLaren and Red Bull. And Mercedes, you would argue, are the last couple of races ahead of Ferrari at the moment.
I agree with that. Did anybody else kind of burst out laughing when Leclerc got that radio message, we project you to finish in the points, yet he's only done 15 laps on a set of hard tyres?
And his lap times weren't great either at that point.
I felt like that was pretty optimistic. But no, Scott, I 100% agree with you. And I think it does have something to do with the fact that I haven't actually said this on a race review. I said this on the midweek show that we did. I know there are some listeners who only listen to our race reviews, so I'll repeat it for their benefit. But Mercedes have a genuine platform to build on now because, they've spent 2 years solving the porpoising issue that has prevented them from making actual solid progress with the performance of the car because the drivers were never able to utilize any updates to it. Now that they've finally solved that issue at the start of this year, they've been able to sort of look at it and go, oh, we need to do this, we need to improve that, and we need to change this. And they've actually got building blocks now. And we had a few false dawns with Mercedes in the past couple of years, but this seems like genuine and sustainable improvement.
I'm glad we're all saying updates instead of upgrades because we've all been trained by Summers, I guess. Because it's
I saw that tweet earlier.
I listened to the Tech Time and I was like, I need to make sure I don't say upgrades from now on unless they actually improve the car.
I love that. It's an update until it works. Then it's an upgrade. We've got a few driver battles as we go down the grid. The Alpines. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Do they have to share a plane home? That was interesting.
No, they won't share a plane home. They're not. They hate each other, don't they?
Oh,
but no love lost between those two.
Not at all. And no team orders. And I think it's a hard situation for the team. So you've got Ocon on the way out. They're closely matched. Ocon's now got the lighter chassis. And Gasly, your continuing driver, is trying to make moves. There was no team orders, and I'm not sure Ocon would have listened anyway.
No, I do think they are on the same plane home, but one of them's in 1A, the other one's in 36F. And they need to be after Ocon was aggressive. He was aggressive in his defense. Go on.
He did I know we've already spoken about Max Verstappen and Lando Norris at turn 3, but he did the Verstappen-Leclerc move on Gasly, and that wasn't penalised. He wasn't asked to give the position back. Gasly was absolutely fuming. So they left that to those two to decide. But it's great to see them fight though, and it's just they obviously do have racing chops between them. And look, once again, Gasly's picked up 3rd race in a row. I think 4th race in a row. He's picked up points positions. I don't think he's been outside the points since Monaco. So a good run of form for Alpine and seem to be heading in the right direction, considering the obviously management issues they've got.
Hang on a minute. They're heading in the right direction. You mean nearly back to where they were?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, they were bottom at the start of the season.
I can feel Matt trumpets breathing down my neck because we haven't mentioned that Ocon lost a brake duct because he was too busy abusing his car and didn't look after it properly. Didn't stroke it. Didn't tick it under the chin enough, and the car went snap.
You can use the loss of the brake duct to explain a loss of pace or whatever, but that is your fault. If you like with Lewis Hamilton, the damaged floor was his fault. So you still have to look after your car. And even if someone runs into you, you still have to look. And I'm sure, Scott, you get this with the carbon fiber fireworks party that is Super Formula on iRacing. But even if you get wiped out and it's not your fault, you do have to kind of think like, okay, am I putting myself in situations where I'm always going to be in trouble? Am I doing something fundamental? Am I taking too many 50-50 chances? And yeah, it's technically the car's fault because I was stood on the zebra crossing, but you've still got hit by the car. So I don't know. I had situations where I kept getting into first lap tussles, and it's because I was leaving too big a gap to the car in front because I was too scared of getting involved in issues, and I was becoming an issue for the cars behind. So, it's still on you to look after your car.
Yeah, definitely. And I think an honourable mention needs to go to Sergio Perez today, because he also didn't look after his car. As I know I've seen lots of people, as we normally do, and we're not going to waste too much time on him because it's the same thing week in, week out. Yeah. Today, he genuinely did pick up damage. I don't know how, to his side pod. He had quite a glaring hole through his left-hand side pod. So that no doubt would have been affecting his performance, which is why he struggled to overtake a very well-performing and finishing Haas in the form of Nico Hülkenberg.
I think it was a result of turn one, because when he sort of involved in that Piastri-Leclerc scuffle at turn four, that he might have been like the instigator. Well, not necessarily the instigator, but it was him and Leclerc first, I think, and then Piastri was a consequence. And he was also delayed. Like we know Max had a slow stop, and Perez also had a slow stop. In fact, his was even longer. So that's why he ended up behind the Haas. But for Max to, have had a puncture for 3/4 of the lap, an extra pit stop, and a 10-second time penalty, and still finish 15 seconds ahead of Perez. And I was thinking about this earlier, and I thought, how much money is Carlos Slim pumping into Checo's contract that makes it worth risking losing the Constructors' Championship by having Perez in that team? It must be a considerable sum.
Yeah, I will just defend Perez here on the Spanners doesn't have to.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, obviously Red Bull made 2 bad pit stops today. So that's obviously added to the time. I don't know how long it was compared to Verstappen's, but they did chuck
or something.
They did chuck Verstappen on the soft tyres at the end after that penalty and after that incident. So he was about 4 seconds a lap or 3, something ridiculous per lap quicker than Perez at the end, who was trying to get past Nico Hülkenberg in a damaged car. But look, he got into Q3, guys. Okay, he got into Q3.
The bare minimum. I mean, this would be fine if at every other Grand Prix he hadn't finished 30 to 60 seconds behind Max when they both finished. So,
Chris, do you think this Carlos Slim is paying more than $1,000?
I would say it's more.
Add a few zeros.
More, 10, maybe 2,000 then, 2,500 maybe dollars to Perez a year.
2,750 at a push, KP.
I tell you, I before we started this podcast, I wrote a little piece on how amazed I am by how well Verstappen has been driving this year. And I wrote a little bit about how he'd have been driving compared to Paris. Just scrapped it all when I saw the last 20 laps, of course.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, something's going on there as well, right? Either Max Verstappen is driving the wheels of that Red Bull, or something has happened to Paris. I think it's both, yeah, and it's probably a mental thing for Perez at this point. It's pretty rare.
I was disappointed. Thanks for the token defense of Perez, by the way. I appreciate it. But then, when Verstappen's having that issue, and I'm just stood there, staring at the screen, going, "Oh my goodness, what did I just see? What just happened? The hell is empty. The devils are here." But I thought with Verstappen taking to the side to, gently usher Lando Norris to the side so that he could park safely, and then having all the tyre stuff and crawling back to the pits, then having to go into the pits and have it be replaced, I was like, oh, wow, he's, Perez is going to be... And then to see him still ahead of Perez after all of that was fairly depressing. I'm out of defences. Who else have we got going down the grid? Oh, go on then, Chris.
Can I just read potential comment of the week? I'm only doing it because people replied to it saying comment of the week, which was Maria Klados. Checo is the only driver who entered F1 as a legit talent and will leave as a pay driver.
Wow. Okay. Well, I don't think that wins. Kristian.
We need to talk about Ricciardo. I know. This is going to be brief, but everyone's going on about this. He's going to be fired. Why is he not delivering? He's delivering. He's been on top of Tsunoda the last couple of races, and he's in the points today. And everyone's still like, well, it's Liam's seat. It's like people are not watching the races. They're just reading Reddit or something.
Yeah, it was a great drive from Ricciardo in 9th place. And it seems Ricciardo just needs someone to come out in the media and just G him up, just basically put him down and say he's going to lose his seat. Jacques Villeneuve a few weeks ago at Canada, and then I think it was Helmut Marko who come out and was talking about Lawson replacing him after summer. Whether that will still be the case, I don't know, but every time he's been attacked, shall we say, in the media, and he's going to lose his seat, he G's himself up and he puts in a good performance. To be in P9, I mean, removing Lando Norris's retirement, he still would have been finishing in 10th place. So that's good. That's really good from an RB car that's struggling at the moment.
And the rumor is Williams.
Is it? What for Ricciardo?
The Ricciardo rumor currently is...
I haven't heard that.
That's brand new.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so that does...
And it's brand new information.
Yeah, but that could be a tactic for Williams, right? For Sainz. And I mean, lots of things going on. It could be a tactic from Ricciardo's team as well. But I mean, it would be it would be a nice fit, wouldn't it? Albon, Ricciardo at Williams.
So one of the gossip things going around this morning is that the teams are losing patience with Carlos Sainz holding them off. And so my personal suspicion is that Mercedes are still pushing for Verstappen 2025. And I think that is still a legitimate possibility that something's being spoken about. And that's why Christian Horner's being mean and won't let Jos Verstappen play with the old Red Bull car in the Legends Parade. And that's being played out in the public and is horrendous. So I think Sainz still thinks there might be a Red Bull seat there, which is interesting because there's no guarantee that if Verstappen goes, Sainz is the obvious drop-in candidate. I don't know if they've told him that. And so, yeah, if you're Williams and you're Alpine and you're Audi, you might be sitting there going, hey, I'm pretty too. You know, I've got suitors. And frankly, you know, there is a bit of a light bulbs element to it, which is, yeah, Sainz, pretty decent pilot, Polito, but there are other Sainzes out there. So he might have overplayed his hand here. Chris?
Yeah, for Ricciardo, I think he should be replaced by Lawson anyway. And, you know, and actually Jasper in the live chat's got my back on this one because it seems like the kind of excuse we use for Lance Stroll, or people use for Lance Stroll, whereas like he's got one good result and we go, look the old Daniel, he's still there.
I'm driving through a tunnel. I cannot hear. I have really bad connection here.
But yeah, no, but that is a little bit. And I almost said it here a couple of weeks ago. I almost said, look at the results Tsunoda's getting around Ricciardo. Please remember this if Ricciardo has a few good weekends and beats him a couple of weekends, because it doesn't undo a season's worth of Tsunoda being all over it. Yeah, Scott?
Yeah, Tsunoda's still got the upper hand considerably over Ricciardo at the moment. I mean, there's still a long way to go. I think we've got 14 races left or something like that. Ridiculous still rest of the season. So see what plays out there. But just touching lastly, just the last point on Sainz is that he made a comment in the post-race interviews, I think it was. And he said, I'm just happy to enjoy these podiums because I don't know how many more I've got left.
That's
so
the biggest load of rubbish.
I know, but I don't think he's still hanging out. I don't think he's still hanging out for a Red Bull seat. I think what's maybe stalled the Williams deal is, as we've discussed previously, is the Alpine offering him a a good contract term. I think mostly it's not about where he ends up. I think it's him being able to have a get out and rely on his reputation of being a top driver and being in a good position to get out after 2025. I think that's really what he's really caring about and what he's probably stalling on. But we'll see.
Patron Mia makes a great comment. Hence, Toto made no comment about the Norris Verstappen incident. I think that's true because he doesn't want to prejudice the driver that he's after. So I disagree. I think Sainz is still holding out for Red Bull.
Spanners, how can you get access to this chat room while we're live streaming?
Well, that's amazing. Really, it's just an additional bonus for people who choose to support an independent podcast so that we can battle and be as high as 48 in the podcast episode sports charts for iTunes in the US, which is what we were last week. And that is all down to the extra content and extra time we can spend because of our patrons. And they support us at patreon.com/Missed Apex. Please consider it. It's in the show notes below. You've gone an hour and 15 minutes into our waffle. We might be providing some value. Please encourage us to keep doing this kind of thing by going there, patreon.com/Missed Apex. And Chris, this is where you go. And what else can they get? What other perks?
I was going to say we go back to back and fold our arms and smile. Hey, wink, ding.
Yeah. Also, there is.
But what else can you get, Spanish?
An ad-free feed. So you get a link, or you can link it to Spotify, and then that removes the advert. So it's like a freemium. That's what we are. We're a freemium podcast. So, and then the other extra thing is the fantastic Discord server, and extra content. Probably every other race weekend where we just do, hang out on the Patreon stream and learn a little bit more about us.
How do I get the free feed?
You can either use the RSS link from your patreon.com account, or you can click the link to Spotify button and the Patreon Spotify link will be there.
Which kind of feed is it? Is it like human feed or?
It's an RSS feed, a really simple script that goes and asks for a new podcast episode. But thanks for clarifying that, Kristian.
Oh, it's with a D. I thought it was a G.
No. Listen, Denmark, right? We're going on to you next, all right? Don't think you've got away with it because Magnussen pressed the radio button again. Hey, I think this is the first race where we saw Magnussen on screen and it wasn't for getting a penalty. So that's an improvement, isn't it?
I'm really confused because, so first of all, like on Saturday evening, Hulkenberg and Magnussen, they were best buddies, weren't they? Right? Yeah. They were posting photos of the Denmark versus Germany game. We're gonna enjoy this together. I definitely didn't tell you to suck a certain part of myself 4 years ago.
That was 4 years ago.
However many years ago it was. And then suddenly the next day goes around and Magnussen's saying, "Oh, both cars need to save," and he's like, whatever.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said
whatever.
whatever.
Unto himself. Yeah.
But he was driving behind the Hulkenberg, and he could see he wasn't saving his tires. So he wasn't trusting the message he got, and he's already out of that team. So he's driving his own races now.
He was right not to trust it.
Magnussen is out of that?
I'm pretty sure Magnussen is out of Haas.
I mean, we're all thinking it, right? You're just saying it because... What did he say the other day? F1 is empty to him and he doesn't care if he stays.
No. That's not what he said. He said it's hard to find the motivation. He said most people in my position would have already quit, is what he was saying.
Oh, okay.
And he also said that Gene has always been honest to him and he's got a good relationship with Gene. But you have to look at the realities, which is a Beerman, right? And apparently Ocon is already signed with them.
Is that right?
So Ocon and Beerman.
Yeah. Ocon and Beerman.
But an interesting comment from Magnussen a couple of weeks ago when they said about the driver market, he said, we're all waiting for him. And he pointed to Sainz. So he's the cork in the bottle. So that must mean Magnussen thinks that there's an option somewhere else. And the interesting thing with Magnussen is he does come with national sponsors. So if he was to turn up at a Williams, for example, William, he could bring some money.
I don't know about UKP, but I think Magnussen's most likely option is to return to sports car racing in America.
Yeah, I was about to say the exact same thing. You can basically tell it by the interviews he gave this weekend, where he was like, "So if there's no F1, what are you going to? I'm definitely going back to sports cars. I miss sport car. It was so fun, blah blah blah." And he's an excellent sports car driver, whereas his dad was.
All right,
it's a bit different to when he left it, but it should still.
It is.
All right, let's move on to the podium. On an Austrian Grand Prix that added a thrilling chapter to the soap opera that is F1 2024. And, you know, you have to follow the stories and the personalities in F1 as much as the sport these days. And when I speak to the Americans, so when I speak to Meg on The Ringer or Jess Smetana when she comes on, or when I went on the Batard show, when they talk about these interpersonal relationships, they call them storylines. They actually call them storylines. So there's a significant part of the F1 audience that is here for that rolling drama. And I'm not going to gatekeep what kind of fan you are, because there are some fans, like my son, who only really perk up when there's crashes. So he perked up a lot today. There are people who are there for the engineering side, who are pure just petrol heads, and they just love the engineering and the manufacturing competition of those cars. And then there's people like me and Scott who were there much more for the kind of technical racing side and the sporting side of it. So if you want to be there for the drama and the gossip and the green room, I'm not going to gatekeep that. But for you, it was a fantastic chapter of Formula One today. So now it's time to give out the awards, and we want to end on the good one. So we'll start on the bad one, where we judge people from our sofas.
Oh no, you missed the apex.
So, us, with all the knowledge and power of having seen the race on telly, will judge the athletes at the pinnacle of motorsport. Kristian Pedersen, you still off of social media? You still chickening out? You still shying away?
No, actually, I've just activated my Instagram again.
Oh, Instagram.
I'm going to give you the notes.
Okay.
But maybe I should wait for an episode where I wasn't so harsh on Verstappen.
Nope. Let's go. Let's all swarm onto Kristian's Instagram.
I'll put it in.
Oh.
My bad thing is actually I haven't written anything about the racing today, because everyone's going to pick the Max Verstappen stuff. But I'm going to say the Flavio Briatore thing for the Renault team. I don't understand how how it can go from bad to worse in such a high speed, and no one really understands what is going on. Apparently, if you're reading Joe Saward, it's all part of a selling plan.
Oh,
and in
that's what I
that
predicted.
regard, I can understand maybe the hiring, but it's so bad for your reputation. I don't understand it. It's branding. It's the worst branding I've ever seen, and it's not going to work in Formula One either.
Did anybody else love Flavio and Jos being interviewed at the same time on Martin's grid walk before the race? That was wholesome.
Two great upstanding characters in motorsport.
No comment from me. And we've got Scott Tuffey. Scott Stuffy Tuffey, who is probably the best alternative to commentary out there at the moment, and join his very popular watch-alongs during a race weekend. I heard that there's 1 billion people per stream watching you at the moment. It's up to 2 billion.
Just a few zeros shy of that.
Okay, but it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's really good if you want to come and get some alternative commentary and have a chat and a great community that we've got going on there. It's different. Lots of people don't have access to F1 across the world, and I'm kind of providing a service that's different to it. And of course, my sim racing exploits as well on iRacing. But my missed apex of the weekend has to go to Christian Horner, with his comments about Lando Norris's driving at the end. Just kind of Red Bull of old. Obviously, we've spoken about Max rearing, coming back again, the same old Max. It's also same old Red Bull. And the Red Bull that has been lauded over, and rightfully so, for the last couple of years of their dominating. But this was also Christian Horner and the Red Bull pit wall of old. They're my missed apex award.
And Chris Stevens at Chris on Racing on
That's
Twitter,
me.
and you yell at race cars as well. You go, oh no, that race car's hit the other race car in your series that you do.
I talk about race cars for a living, so this coming weekend I'm back at Hockenheim, second time at Hockenheim this year for me, with different series. It's good. This is a
You're
nice.
doing it as a
period
job.
for
I
me.
remember when you quit
right?
your job and said, I'm going to do motorsport stuff full time, saying things. And I went, no, I was the hater. I said, no, you loser, you're going to starve.
That was like exactly a year ago.
Oh,
Like a week ago. It was a year ago.
Cool.
Or something. And it's dumbest decision but best decision I ever made.
mate, I've been there. I've been there. At least you didn't have a global pandemic strike exactly 6 months later. So at Chris on Racing, go and follow all his stuff there. Chris, who missed the apex for you?
I'm going to give it to Fernando Alonso. Because I think we're a couple of races away from him saying, "Oh no, I've got a mechanical issue, got to come in as soon as I fall out the points," which will be straight away because he won't have made it to Q3.
We were this close to this is a GP2 track.
Yeah.
Okay, and me. Okay, I'm going to give my missed apex award to anyone who is complaining about what happened today and the super aggressive defense from Max Verstappen that ended up in the lead two cars getting taken out, but who then didn't also call this all out in 2021 when it was happening again and again and again. And just imagine if in 2021, and this is, again, no fault of Max's. Max is driving to the limit of where he's allowed to drive to. Fair play to him. But imagine if the stewarding in 2021, or even beyond that, had just stamped down on that kind of driving and said, no, we leave room for people. We penalise moving in the braking zone. We don't like this type of driving. Today, as exciting and dramatic as it was, we could have had a real ding-dong race. Look at Norris versus Russell last week. We could have great racing in Formula One instead of demolition derbies. So my missed apex goes to the people who enabled that in 21 in the media and are suddenly now going, oh, it's a big, big problem. I'm even getting a clap from Kristian. And follow me as well at Spanners Ready, and follow the show at Missed Apex F1, and go and check out the live show that we're going to be doing by going to missedapexpodcast.com/live show. Soon to be details of a couple of America dates as well. What's the one we do now? Oh, we get to end on a positive. We've got to be quick here because we've got to sneak in and stay under the hour. But Kristian, let's do a positive one. Who hit the apex for you?
I was going to say the 26 hirings from Williams. I was going to say the track limits with the gravel. I was going to say the Hans Zimmer before the show. But I'm going to pick the fact that we now have real racing. I know everyone's like, oh, we have a crash and it's the 21 again. And everyone's got something to talk about. But if we look at it, we finally have something going up up front.
Competition, yeah.
And it's just, we've been waiting for this. And I think he's also doing it in a fair and just charming way, basically. He's been driving that car up to the back of Verstappen. He's not been cheating or anything. That is solid. And I love McLaren being in the spotlight.
From day one, Stella has felt like a steady hand, hasn't he?
Definitely. And he showed very much today that he's capable of holding it still.
Scott Tuffey, my favourite, because we're both fellow ragdoll cat owners. Who hit the apex for you today?
My hit in the apex is the sprint format. No, I'm only kidding.
I went, whoa, did I mishear that?
I'm only kidding.
Sprint was okay for a sprint. It was okay. We had some...
We had one.
We had two corners worth of good.
2 corners. It still misses the mark for me, and I think we're all quite fatigued come the race weekend. Anyway, we've said that enough on this podcast, and unfortunately, they're not going anywhere anytime soon.
Nope.
But hitting the apex for me, actually, kind of, depending on which side of the coin you're on, I think you could probably interpret it as a miss the apex, is the Red Bull pit crew. Because if it wasn't for them finally actually having a slow pit stop, because they've been so faultless,
bulletproof,
we wouldn't have had this battle today. I don't think Lando would have closed up. I don't think the tyre deficit was as substantial as most probably made it think it was. Max was put under pressure instantly out of the pits, which he hasn't had for, well, the last 3 years, because they've been amazing. But today they wasn't, and look how it turned out.
Well,
so
if you had
thank you guys, thank you.
Thanks for taking a break from excellence. But I mean, they have been so on it that you could almost rely on it. So if they'd had a 1.9 second stop, and then Max hadn't have locked up and hadn't put a little flat spot on his tyre, we're in the same situation as Spain, where you've got a nice 7 second buffer, and you can look behind And if they're catching up, you kind of go, all right, yeah, use your tyres up to catch up. I'll see you when you close the gap to 3 seconds and I'll manage it from there.
I think Lando had better tyres, though, no?
Yes, he did. He had
Brand spanking new.
He did have new
They
tyres.
were only Max's were only 3-lap tyres though, 3-lap old tyres. So it's
I feel like that makes a difference.
There wasn't 7 or 8 seconds in those tyres over.
That's fair.
The race distance left. We saw those tyres fall off after a certain amount of laps of attacking. So look, it put the pressure straight on him, and amazing. Obviously, look what ended up happening, and what we're all talking about now.
All right, and I guess that leaves it to me for my.
No, I haven't done mine yet.
Chris?
Okay, fine.
God.
I'm too excited about mine. Go on, Chris.
Well, KP already mentioned Hans Zimmer.
That intro, the anthem. It was so good.
So awesome.
He's amazing.
And the fact that he just fully embraced the podium, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was like, yes, coat me in champagne. I love it.
And there was good musicians all playing well, and it had been mic'd up properly. And you go, well, follow that, Silverstone.
Exactly. Oh, it's proper. Oh, don't. Because have you seen who's singing the...
No,
I'm not even going to...
No, who is it?
No,
who is it?
Who is it?
It's some actor who's sang one song in his life and therefore that qualifies him for singing the anthem. I can't remember his name.
Was it Damien Lewis last year?
Yeah,
that
It
was
was
horrendous.
last year. I still
Don't
have
even know he could
nightmares
sing.
of when Leona Lewis did it. Anyway, no, my real hit the apex is going to be Andrea Stella for his post-race comments and just straight away calling out and saying we needed to call Max out on this a long time ago, and that is what has led to today's situation.
Okay, and I'm going to give my hit the apex to. Oh, go on, you're going to chip in there, Kristian. Go for it.
What, is it Mr. Bean?
No, go on, make your comment. It's fine.
Yes, Rowan Atkinson is the actor.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Who's singing the anthem?
Is it?
Silverstone.
Oh, no.
No.
What?
No, it's not.
You just said it was an actor, and my guess was Mr. Bean, and everyone's taking it seriously. What's going on here?
Kristian, why would you guess? There's a lot of British actors. Just let me do my... We're so close to the end. Okay, my Hit the Apex award goes to actually... I was going to give it to Kevin Magnussen, but now I feel like you've brought shame on all of Denmark.
Do it.
It's Hannah Waddingham.
Oh, brilliant. Okay,
Lasso.
I'll give that a chance. She's fantastic. Okay.
Really? Okay.
If you don't think Hannah Waddington is fantastic, you're not coming back on this show.
I think she's a great actress, but she did like one song for charity.
She did the karaoke bit in Ted Lasso, and you will shut your mouth right now, Christopher.
Okay.
I forgot So Kevin Magnussen, because he was given a kind of half-truth team order, and he just turned around and he said, forget that, and carried on racing. And I would love to see that called out more, because a lot of the team orders are lies, and some of the teams don't handle those situations well. But I think it's a lesson for all the teams going forward. Have your Verstappen, have your Hamilton, have your Leclerc, have your Vettel, have your Alonso, have your number one driver, and don't cloak and dagger it. Just have some hotshot kid. And if he's good or she's good, then they usurp your previous good driver and you send them to the glue factory. So my Hit the Apex to Kevin Magnussen. Thank you so much to my crew, Kristian Pedersen, Chris Stevens, Scott Tuffey, and me, Richard Reddy, the best one. Follow me at Spanners Ready and join us midweek for some content if we manage to get some going. But if not, we will see you on Sunday for our Silverstone race review around 8 p.m. And that's if you're not coming to our live event. Until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast.